Welcome to Heal, Grow, and Thrive After Toxic Love, an event for women ready to live a life unapologetically. I'm Susan Ball, your host for the event, and I want to welcome my guest, Bex Burton, love coach for independent women. Hi, Bex, and thank you for joining me.
Hi, Susan. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. What a beautiful opportunity, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Your topic, I love this topic. Attract and grow healthy love without losing yourself. Losing yourself. So let's dive into this, Bex, because it's an important topic. I mean, majority of women that I speak with as clients have lost themselves in the process. And when you say to them, it's time for you, your wants, needs, and desires, they just sometimes look at you very blank because they have given up everything about themselves to make this relationship work.
Yeah,
So yeah, let's get started.
beautiful. Absolutely. Yes, let's put ourselves in the driver's seat and not lose ourselves again.
I know. So how do you attract and grow healthy love without losing yourself? We seem to have a tendency to do that, don't we?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that I mean it stems from many different places, and we kind of look at our family of origin to understand where these patterns come from. But what it looks like is just like what you said. We as women, and men do this too, but more often women feel this responsibility, this impulse to be everything, to do everything, to make the relationship work, to make the man want her, to desire her, to be that person for her. Yet she will strip all of the things about her that make her amazing, wonderful, attractive, exciting, unique, and special to fit the box or to fit the mold of what she thinks this person needs or wants, or what she thinks she should be to be in a healthy, long lasting relationship. Excuse me. When in fact, I'll say we because I've been there too, we get it wrong. When we do that. And what actually attracts our person to us are all of those wonderful things that make us special and unique and wonderful and powerful and intelligent and thriving in this world as individuals. And so the work then becomes, okay, how do we maintain all of those wonderful juicy elements of who we are as an individual and integrate that into partnership? And it's not easy, absolutely not, but it's
No,
possible.
yes, it is possible. I've done it. I've been successful now,
Excellent.
but it's not the easiest thing to do because we tend to want to go, oh, if I stand up and I say I don't like this or I want to do this or I'm going to go out here or I'm going to do this thing, we feel that we're letting someone down or we're not being a good girl or we're, I don't know, stepping out of bounds somehow and we should back up and be small.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so many of us in our collective female experience, we have been conditioned to quiet our voice, to be the good girl, to to make sure that everybody around us is happy, through whatever family of origin system that trained us to do so. The patterns are very similar. The pattern to be a people pleaser, the pattern to be codependent in some cases, the pattern to be a good girl, the pattern to say no to our own impulses, intuition, to the point where we no longer hear them. Um, so those patterns are very universal. They're very much the same, and they show up across the board. And I mean, I like I said, I include myself in this category. I have, through self reflection and much work through healing professionals, have identified that my some of my biggest fears in partnership are disappointing my partner, or letting my partner down, or I guess that would be disappointing or inconveniencing my partner are the things that I've identified through my patterns and my behaviors in the past. That is really the common denominator of why I will override my own needs or intuition in service of his needs. I will put his needs on a pedestal and just completely neglect my own. And up until many years ago, that was how I unconsciously operated in relationships, relationship after relationship after relationship, until the point where I would get to this place where, we have that scene from a movie where we look ourselves in the mirror and we say, "My God, who am I? Where did I go?" And we realize that, wow, I've completely lost who I am, what makes me special, what makes me unique, what I love, what brings me joy. And my coping mechanism, and many of my clients will get to that point and they will, I like to lovingly call it, flip the table and walk out of the restaurant. They'll just ditch everything about the relationship and just leave, because they think that they think that the problem is the relationship, or they think that the problem is the other person, the man who's too controlling, or, which may be the case, I will give you that. Um, but many times there's a dynamic. It's not just the other person, but we are also contributing to that scenario.
That's a very important point, Bex, that a lot of people don't want to talk about. But sometimes it comes down to communication or lack thereof, or lack of boundaries that we as women, and sometimes men, don't express to our partner. And then it builds resentment, and it builds frustration, and it builds all of those things. Till you flip the table and you walk out.
Mhm.
One of the things that I was really, when I went through my healing, and healing is ongoing for me. I like to say that out loud, that you
Yeah.
don't finish, you keep going, you keep
Yeah.
growing. But one of the things that I discovered about myself that I didn't really recognize until it was pointed out to me was, I was one of those women who did the, I hope he knows what I want for my birthday. Doesn't he know that I want to
Mm.
go out for dinner for my birthday? He should know that.
Right. And many women fall in that camp where it's like, my partner should just know. They should just, and that's assuming on our part that the other person just knows. And I'll give you that, Susan, that you even were in touch with what you wanted. And there are so many women out there that either are so far down the line in the relationship, or just disconnected with their own experiences, that they don't even have that understanding of what they want or what they need. Or maybe they do, but they don't give it validity. They don't find worth in it because of that historic precedent, the excuse me, the historic pattern of our needs, our desires, our wants, our joys, our celebrations just being talked out of us, or overridden for somebody else's needs or wants or desires being seemingly or communicated to be more important than ours in that moment. So, there's a couple of levels here. There's that first level of being radically self-focused, and I find that one of the keys to lasting love is being self-focused. Of course, there's an element of being outer focused and focused on another, but for women who find that they're in this pattern of losing themselves in relationship over and over again, for women who feel that they give and they give and they give, for women who are, consistently feeling like they're being extinguished in relationship, then the part of the medicine to grow lasting love is to turn our focus back to ourself and really be in self inquiry around, well, what do I want for my birthday? And really identifying that, and get to the point where you're talking about, Susan, where you know what you want for your birthday. And then from that place, then be able to communicate it skillfully in an adult, healthy way that isn't shaming the other person, or, nagging the other person, but, learning the skillful communication to have your needs and desires, come to light and be heard by your partner.
Yeah, I love the fact that you say it's 2 layers, because it is. There's the knowing you, and then there's learning to communicate that. And I sometimes joke around with my husband when my birthday's coming up or something important. I'll say to him, "What do you mean you don't know what I want? You should know." And you can actually see, even though he knows I'm joking, the blood rush from his face, like, "What have I missed?"
Scramble, scramble.
Yeah. And even though we're joking about it, it is something that people do. So getting in touch with who you are, especially if you've been doing this pattern over and over again. And one of the things, the pattern that I learned, Bex, was don't rock the boat.
Mm,
So every
mhm.
time I would go to say, I want this, or I need this, or whatever, these words would come, oh, don't rock the boat. It's not worth it. Is it worth it? Pick your battles, blah, 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 all of that
Yeah.
stuff. So where does a woman or a man start to self reflect and look at those internal wants, needs, and desires that help to grow healthy relationships?
Yeah, great question. So the lens that I approach this with is through the emotional experience. Most of the women that I work with are very busy, very, high performing. And if there is any downtime in their day or their life, they are not looking inward. They are scrolling on social media, or they're talking on the phone with a friend, or they're filling their time. They're doing something other than getting quiet, getting still, and looking inward. And when we do have the courage to get quiet, to get still and look inward, we can start to look at our emotional experience. So for me, that was a huge learning curve. I know for many of the women that I work with, it's a huge learning curve of accepting our emotional experience for what it is. And what it is a grand messenger. So not only is it a grand messenger, but it's all good. It's all okay. We are human beings having a human experience, which means we have a 360-degree full emotional experience. And what I try to impart on the women that I work with is that our emotions are not good. They're not bad. I mean, they might feel good and they might feel crappy, but they're not inherently good or bad. What they are messengers. They're messengers for our wants, our needs, and our desires. So if we're having an emotion that's making us feel really crappy, chances are they are pointing to a need that we have that is absolutely valid, is absolutely warranted, and that need is not being met. So for example, if if my husband and we have a system where, he wakes up an hour before I do and he goes into the kitchen and he unloads the dishwasher as part of his morning practice and does his thing. And then I get up an hour later and I go to make my breakfast and there's a dishwasher full of clean dishes and he hasn't done his part. I might have a feeling of resentment. I might have a feeling of disrespect. I might have a feeling of like, eye roll. I call it eye roll energy, just to kind of lump all those emotions into one category. But for me, instead of like popping my face off and like barking at him about what he did or didn't do, when I have that emotion, right away, again, because I'm having the courage to slow down, get still, and pay attention, I'm saying, wow, I'm having a really strong reaction to this. What's going on here? And so I'm feeling, I'm looking inward and I'm saying, oh, I'm having a feeling. I'm having a feeling of eye roll energy, for lack of, sometimes it's just I'm having an emotion. I'm having a strong emotion. If I can't pinpoint it, that's okay. And what I can trace back after that, it's like, okay, this emotion is pointing to something. And there's a need. There's a higher need of needing to be respected, needing to feel like a partner, needing to feel like we're a team. And then there's sort of like this more tangible need of like, I need you to unload the dishwasher. So so getting to know ourselves is really just that process of acknowledging our emotional experience and saying, gosh, I'm having a feeling. And it can be the opposite. It could be this exuberant feeling of joy and celebration because a need is being met. A need that's important to us is actually being met. A need to be seen, a need to be understood, or, again, at the tangible level, that need for the dishwasher to be unloaded and ready for me to load stuff up. It's being met.
It's funny that you say that because the majority of arguments that couples have are not about the tangible need. That's not
Right.
what's happening. It's about the
Exactly.
bigger level that nobody is sitting and being still or figuring out what that is. And like you said, it could be feeling disrespected or feeling abandoned or feeling neglected or
Right.
whatever that is. But it does take courage and it is necessary for the to to experience those emotions so that you can understand it's not about the dishwasher and not to bark about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that takes time. And it takes time.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of trial and error,
Mhm.
because that process of self-reflection begins with hindsight. It could be because doing it in the moment takes a lot of practice, just like building a bicep muscle or building your gluteus maximus. You've got to go to the gym, you got to do your squats, you got to do your repetitions. The same thing is true for building that emotional intelligence and that communication skill. It takes time. And while we're building that skill, we look at the past. We look at where we didn't show up so skillfully and where we did bark at our partner or bark at our date, or for doing or not doing something that didn't meet that need. We look at that as information because that's a gold mine of data that we can get quiet, we can get still, we can reflect upon, even though the situation has already passed. Like, that is so much information if we can look backward with gentleness, with compassion. So many of us, again, in the same category of high performing doers, we have a perfectionism streak where if we look back at where we may not have showed up so skillfully or where we hurt somebody, we can really judge ourselves for that. And this is where mindfulness and self-compassion really plays a key role, because we can only learn from our mistakes and how we have shown up unskillfully, with this gentleness, this softness for who we've been in the past, and for this acceptance of our imperfect human experience.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said that we are going to continue to make mistakes. This is not, you know, a 24-hour fix. You're going to meditate on it and you're going to come out of it and know all your emotions and know all of the triggers and so on. It doesn't work that way. My husband is a truck driver. He goes to work 4 days and then he's home 4 days and he's gone 4 days. He's gone all night. I have abandonment issues. So a lot of my things were around, oh, I don't want to argue with him because he might leave. He might leave. I'll do everything right. And sometimes I find myself, he'll look at me and he'll say, you look really angry or you look upset.
Mhm,
What's going on? And it takes me in that moment. I want to bark at him and say something mean or attack. But in
mhm,
that moment, I have to take a deep breath and say, I'm just feeling like you're not going to come home again.
mhm.
It's
Yeah,
that moment of abandonment. It's that self-reflection that helps you grow into the relationship because then he understands what's going on.
yeah, yeah, totally. And I share that impulse to
Mm,
react to that inquiry. My husband is a ginger. He's very sensitive, and he will often feel my feelings before I feel them myself. And I have a similar impulse of like, well, what's wrong? What am I doing wrong? When he genuinely expresses a very innocent and neutral concern, and it took me a really long time to recognize, oh, he sees me. Like, he is seeing me, and that is uncomfortable for me because I have not had strong, powerful men in my life who have seen me, and have really like validated what I'm experiencing, and so for to have a partner who sees you, my goodness, what a gift, what a blessing. And again, we have this responsibility as powerful women to like let that in, and to like allow somebody to care for us in that way without without making it personal and like, I'm doing so, what am I doing wrong, what's wrong with my face?
yeah, what's wrong with my face?
Right.
So, a bit losing ourselves,
Yes.
the emotional aspect of it all. There's a great fear from women about doing that, sitting and being still and reflective and allowing emotions to come and go and reflecting on them. And there's also an attitude, and you spoke about this a little bit, bad emotions versus good emotions, which is so
Mhm.
much BS because they're
Yeah.
all our emotions and they all serve a purpose. So what would be a good way, I suppose, or a good exercise for a woman to get into that space where she feels safe to allow emotions to come in? I
Yeah.
know I was very closed off to that, Bex. It was like, I don't want to
Same.
feel that. I don't want to know about that. That's not important to me
Yeah.
for a long time.
Yep. I totally understand. Same. I have a very similar history, Susan. We could have tea over this.
I
Um,
know.
and it's true. Mindfulness meditation is not necessarily the entry point for everybody, particularly those who have experienced trauma in the past, or, toxic relationships. Being alone with our thoughts can be a very scary, if not threatening thing to entertain. So, ideally, we'd like to work towards that, because I do believe that, being quiet with our mind for just 10 minutes at a time can open up a lot of awareness, self-awareness. However, like I said, that's not always safe. It's not always the right entry point for people. And, my entry point was movement. I come from a movement background, and I made that my profession for a very long time. And it was always about joyful movement, about how can I feel alive and vibrant and, just connected, and use my body as the vehicle for that. Um, and so, to women listening who may not feel as though they can, for me, it was like, I can't sit still for 10 minutes and think my thoughts. Like, I can't do that, but if it's anything like that, or if it's a threatening or unsafe proposition to be still with our thoughts for 10 minutes in mindfulness meditation, I highly encourage some form of movement, whether it be joyful movement. Hopefully it's joyful movement, whether that be walks in nature or 5-minute dance parties. For me, my while I was a personal trainer and Pilates instructor for a very long time, my love for about 10 years was the hula hoop. And I was a hula hoop dancer and hula hoop instructor. And I would just spend hours. And of course, at this point in my life, I don't necessarily have hours, but even 10, 15 minutes in some kind of movement practice, that we're listening to music that lights our soul up, that allows us to at least quiet the thinking mind, and allow our kinesthetic mind to expand, our sense of motion, our feeling sense. That's one place that we can sort of enter the waters of self-awareness. um, other avenues to kind of touch into this self-awareness would be pleasure practices, and pleasure and grounding, for example. So there's a very common grounding practice where we look around the room and we identify 5 things that we see in our visual sense, and we call them out. I see a pineapple lamp. I see a unicorn. I see a dancer in a tutu. And that brings us into the present moment by calling out those things that we see in our visual sense. But we can expand that practice into things that we see, things that we taste, touch, smell, or hear, any of our senses that bring us pleasure. So beyond my camera, I can see the outside, and the light hitting the trees is just absolutely beautiful right now. The temperature of my room right now is very pleasing. I feel very comfortable in my body right now. So these and what I'm describing, this pleasure and this grounding practice, would be even, if the movement entry point feels a little daunting, we can begin at even more of a simpler place.
Yeah, I began in nature.
Yeah.
I found myself going out for walks in the woods and just listening to the stillness that was in nature and connecting with that, and it really helped. I'm not saying
Mhm.
it wasn't scary when things would pop up and there would be an emotion, and I can remember at times several things happening, and maybe some people can relate to this, and it might happen naturally. It did for me. I would go for a walk in the forest or in the park or wherever, and sometimes I would come out crying
Mhm.
because something
Yep.
came up, or I'd come out basically stomping my feet like a little girl,
Sure.
you know, but that's your emotions finally coming up and being
Yeah.
expressed, and it is, what do you need right now? What do you need? And that starts the process of understanding what it is you need, want, and
Yeah.
desire.
Absolutely. And nature is such a wonderful medicine for that, because it strips us away from the technology that we are surrounded by all of the time. It takes us out of our regular 4 walls, which can often create patterns of thinking. Um, and there's something else about what happens with the nervous system when we go out into nature. Our breath might slow down, our soul might feel more expansive, and that allows for these other, maybe more quiet or unconscious things to rise to the surface. The other thing that came up for me as you were sharing, Susan, was you're talking about coming out of your walk, and maybe you were crying, or maybe you were stomping your feet and clenching your fists with anger. And I think that there's another opportunity here for women to pay attention to the emotions that they exile, or the emotions that they make wrong, or are uncomfortable feeling. You know, for many of us, anger is an emotion that we have either been has either been stripped away from us or talked out of us, or, you know, in some cases beaten out of us. You know, if you're a 2-year-old who is very you know, strong-willed and had temper tantrums, you know, and maybe you got spankings for those temper tantrums. But those temper tantrums as a 2-year-old, maybe you didn't have the language to express what you needed and wanted. So you would express your displeasure in whatever way was possible for you. And then to receive that with like a beating, then of course we're going to develop a very complex relationship with anger. We're going to suppress that anger. So I just use that as an example because I know many women have that you know, that relationship specifically with anger, but there are other emotions that we sort of write out of our script because it was written out for us at some point in our life. So to pay attention to any of the feelings, the emotions that we're like, oh, I can't go there, or that's not safe, I can't feel that. That's another invitation. That's an opportunity for gentle exploration.
Yes, very gentle. But I'm thank you for bringing that up because anger was one I wasn't allowed to feel. So it was
Yeah,
very shocking and very frightening when
yeah,
those moments did come up and I felt that visceral anger.
mhm,
It was
yeah,
like, okay, well, calm that down, Susan Ball. You're not supposed to go there. That's whatever that is. That was a huge learning and processing for me personally. And I know for a lot of women, anger, you know, it's that be the good girl thing again.
yep, absolutely.
Good girls don't get angry.
Right.
So attracting and growing healthy love.
Yes. Yes. Well, being self-focused, being self-aware is a huge part of it, as I mentioned. Um, I think also in the self-awareness category of this, I mean, I work with 5 pillars of adult relating to attract and grow healthy, lasting love, and self-awareness is the first pillar because there's so much that is that comprises self-awareness, not only our emotional experience leading to the exploration of our needs, but also, you know, there's so much to be said about knowing our patterns and our reactions. And again, you know, gentle exploration, not making ourselves wrong for these things, but understanding and sort of untangling how they were instilled in our programming, installed in our programming. So for those of you out there who haven't done any family of origin therapy, I highly recommend it as a starting point, because if we're not aware of how our upbringing shaped the way that we move through life, then we're moving through life blindly with a set of weapons that we don't, you know, that we know how to use, but we don't know the damage they cause. Or maybe we feel the damage, but we're not using those weapons skillfully. There's really no way to use the weapon skillfully. But what we want to be able to do is understand that some of our patterns and some of our reactions can feel like weapons. So we need to really understand how to put those down and how to show up in more connecting ways. And that is through empathy and compassion, through vulnerability, and through skillful communication. Because if, like I said, you know, if we're sort of blindly walking through life not knowing that we have a trigger for authority or being told what to do, you know, and we snap at anybody who says that we should be doing something when they're really just showing up with genuine concern and care for our well-being, then we're going to be distancing ourselves from others rather than connecting with others.
And the key to all of this is not shaming ourselves, not guilting ourselves, being compassionate with ourselves, being gentle with ourselves, and not blaming ourselves or anyone else. This is just an exploration and a learning about you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my husband and I just took a little mini getaway, and we were actually talking about this, about like the point that we both hit that, you know, kind of launched our awakening, launched our self-reflection, launched our true work in love. And, you know, for me, it was over the course of 10 years, I had 3 long-term relationships that all ended the same way. And, you know, after that happens 3 times, and each of one of those former partners goes through a very dark time after our relationship, I started to recognize that I had a lot more to do with what was happening in my love life than I was letting on, that I was understanding, and the dark times that they went through, I mean, I could have taken a lot of responsibility and I could have made myself very, very wrong for the way that I showed up in those relationships. And I did for a little while there, for sure. And at the same time, you know, I deeply believe in my heart that love is a practice, and that if we, we we have this opportunity to practice love outwardly, but we can only practice love outwardly when we practice love inwardly, when we learn to forgive ourselves for our naivete, for how we've shown up unskillfully, how we've hurt others in the past. Of course, we want to, mend those relationships to whatever degree is possible. But at the same time, what matters most is really healing, mending the relationship that we have with ourselves, and accepting the fact that we are we are human beings having a very human experience. To have emotions is a human experience. To mess up, to f up, and fall in the mud and like be covered in mud, and I mean, it's very human. Of course, that's an analogy. I don't recommend going swimming in mud unless unless that is healing for you. um but yes, I strongly believe that our ability to attract and grow healthy love with a romantic partner is really um is really built on the foundation of the ability that we have to create that connection with ourselves.
One of the reasons why I use the word unapologetic is because
Mhm.
I want women to elevate themselves to the place where they don't feel they have to say they're sorry for
Yeah.
everything that they are,
Right. Yeah.
which we tend to do. And in a relationship, that's not healthy.
Hmm.
Showing up and not apologizing is healthy, because I
Hmm.
found myself apologizing for everything back.
Everything. Right. Yeah, totally. I have to reschedule this meeting. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I
Like,
gained 10 pounds. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Right. So I mean, and here's how I see that. Like, I absolutely believe in the concept of being unapologetic, and I think that is what got me to the relationship that I am in today, 11 years later, which I'm very proud of. At the same time, I I know that I carried a lot of hubris, a lot of self-righteousness, and a lot of other not so skillful ways of relating with the world in my youth, I'll say. Um, I will still say, I'll say I'm still young and I'm still learning. But at the same time, I think that like the differentiation for me is being unapologetic about who we are, and also being willing to apologize for behaviors that have harmed others. Because being unapologetic for who we are is so important, because those things we don't change. We don't even change our wounding. We don't even change our impulse to be the good girl and but the behavior, those things are the things that we want to focus on healing and doing better, and um and genuinely apologizing if those behaviors have harmed another person, because we don't always understand the impact that our actions have on other people. And sometimes when there has been harm, inflicted upon the other person, they don't care why. They don't care. Like there's so much of what we're trying to like defend about what we did, and they don't care. They just want to hear, "I'm sorry I hurt your feelings." So I think that that statement of being unapologetic there, to me, has a yes and, like, yes, absolutely, unapologetically be who you are, be the badass, be the superwoman, be the doer, the multi-passionate, all of that, yes. And we are mindful of our impact, and offer apology when there's been harm.
Yes, and then the apology is sincere and has meaning,
Yeah,
instead of
absolutely.
all of our other apologies. So with
Right.
that,
Yeah,
Right? Because we spend so much time going, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. When we get to a place where we're healthy and we're unapologetic about who we are, when we do apologize, we actually understand the harm that we've caused or that we
right.
hurt someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And that,
Yeah.
like you said, actually means something.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your, I've loved this interview. I could chat with you forever. I have to admit that.
I just can't believe how fast they go
I know.
when we're
It's
having
like,
fun.
we're done. Tell everyone about your free gift, Bex, please.
Yeah, sure. I have a mini training. It is lightning fast. It is a video mini training on the 4 relationships to heal for lasting love. And it walks us through 4 critical relationships that contribute to attracting and growing healthy, lasting love with an amazing partner.
Thank you again, Bex, for joining me. Thank you to all the people who are listening. I wish you all a beautiful and courageous healing journey. You've got this. See you later. Bye.